Prologue, 25th January 2022, 4 pm. Joining back on 1st Feb. That was the subject line of the email I had shoot off to the board of directors that cold January evening. Early that month, I had been coerced into going on a voluntary leave of absence from BharatPe, a company worth $3 billion over 20,000 crore rupees, that I had built painstakingly at an unprecedented pace over the last 3.5 years as its founders and managing director. The whole of a January had been a blur. I was hit relentlessly by one controversy after another. What started with a ransom call became a leaked audio and then became a leaked legal notices and arbitrary statements by Kotak Bank. While the nation was enjoying Shark Tank India and celebrating the new wave of entrepreneurship that was taking the country and millions of TV screens by storm every weeknight from 9 to 10 pm, I was personally fighting a bloody board battle aimed at wresting control of BharatPe from me. During the last week of the month, I was preoccupied handling deceit, betrayal, and politics by my own co-founder, hired management, and thankless investors at BharatPe. Once I proceeded on the so-called voluntary leave, I found out that the locks at BharatPe's Malviya Nagar office had been changed. The CCTV cameras had been switched off. My office and desktop had been broken into and bouncers had been stationed there. Not only were the events absolutely bizarre, but my writing to the board seeking an explanation for this gross overreach was met with absolute silence. Clearly, I had a lot to deal with. But for the first time being, I was relieved that the issue with Kotak hadn't been escalated further and that the bigoted press had lost interest in it. It was time for me to resume office and focus on the next phase of growth for the business. Or so I thought as I sent out that intimation of rejoining office. 25th January 2022, 4:52 pm. Sitting at my desk at home with the light January sun falling over my shoulders, I was thinking through the many problems I needed to solve, especially as we had to operationalize the newly acquired banking license at Unity SFB, the first ever license granted by the Reserve Bank of India to an Indian fintech company, and complete the impending takeover of the beleaguered bank and the Maharashtra Cooperative Bank. That it wasn't VSS or Sachin Bansal, but Ashnir Grover, who had won the first and only bank license given to a fintech, was no mean achievement. One that I was certain would take the company to even greater heights. But it was also a great responsibility as we had to first give 10 lakh depositors access to their capital, which had been stuck in their PMC bank accounts for almost 2 years. My thought process was broken with the ping of an email hitting my inbox. Shorter notice for 11th board meeting. Its subject line read, to my surprise, within less than an hour of my informing the board that I planned to resume office, I was sent a mail from the company secretary at BharatPe informing me of a board meeting being called at short notice Within the next 3 hours, we were to meet at 8 p.m. the same day on Zoom. A bigger shock awaited me when I clicked on the file marked agenda. Item number 5 stared at me. It said, to consider and accept the recommendation of the review committee to acquire Mr. Ashnir Grover to be on leave till March 31, 2022. 25th January 2022, 8 p.m. My name is Ashnir Grover. I am attending this meeting on Zoom from New Delhi. There is no one else in the room with me. The mandatory roll call in hindsight was perhaps the only predictable part of this meeting. The chairman, Rajnish Kumar, joined 10 minutes late, and his first order of business was to ask the Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas, and Alwaris and Marshall team to leave the virtual meeting. Why had they been invited in the first place to a board meeting if they were supposed to leave? Wasn't the chairman privy to the list of invitees to the meeting? As the meeting began, it was stated that a resolution had been passed to set up a 2-member committee to assess the corporate governance practices of the company. This committee, constituted on 22nd January 2022, had engaged the services of the law firm Shardul Amarchand Mangaldas and Co. on 23rd January. In turn, they had engaged the services of the accounting firm Alwaris and Marshall. In fact, the engagement of Alwaris and Marshall was being brought up before the board for the very first time on 25th January. To my utter shock, I was further been told that Alwaris and Marshall had already come up with some alleged preliminary findings. What's more, on the basis of these findings, none of which I was privy to, the board's proposal was to put me on a compulsory leave of absence and strip me of my powers as MD. Some days later, I would go on to learn from media reports that the interim report of Alwaris and Marshall was dated as early as 24th January 2022, in which case I was to believe that they had issued the report within 1 day of appointment and even before their official engagement by the board. In my entire career, I had never seen an instance of a lawyer or an accounting firm being appointed in 1 day. या तो इन्होंने काम भी खत्म कर दिया एक दिन में. They had even released a report in 1 day. Even in my stern state, as I felt severely let down, with a blatant conspiracy breathing against me, I asked for an opportunity to present my views before agenda item number 5 would be taken up by the board and I would be asked to drop off. I raised objections about the need for and composition of the review committee and said that it did not comply with the shareholders agreement and the articles of association of the company. I was pointed out that corporate governance review covered the entire company and not only me. So by that logic, everyone should be on leave. If I was being singled out, was there any complaint against me? At whose best had the law firm appointed? My questions were met with deafening silence at the other end. Then I heard the chairman, Rajnish Kumar, saying, "You may drop off from the call now as we need to put the proposal to vote." I would find out later that the proposal was passed unanimously, of course. All of this, interestingly, when I did not have any communication from the board accusing me of any wrongdoing, and when the so-called review was meant to be a review of corporate governance policies, practices, and code of the company. 26th January 2022. Yet another email. An outcome of the 25th January meeting. This time, I was instructed to go on compulsory leave till 31st March 2022 and not to come to office or interact with the press, employee or shareholders, business partners, customers, vendors or any other person associated with the company, pending the governance report. For good measures, I was also instructed to return my laptop. Just like that, from being celebrated as the most successful new age founder of a unicorn, one who believed in speaking his mind, one who got startups and entrepreneurship into mainstream conversation through Shark Tank India, one who had earned millions of dollars from his investors and employees, I had been rendered persona non grata. While the building of the company had taken over 42 painstaking months, the outer was done in matter of hours in a pre-planned move. The press, or rather the tabloids, operating in India in the garb of business news outlets, was once again having a field day, operating with no qualm or integrity, publishing news fed to them for rewards. BharatPe, likely to fire co-founder Ashnir Grover amid fraud concerns, reported a leading business daily as early as 30 January, quoting undisclosed people familiar with the development. If this were an episode from Shark Tank India, I would probably have been tempted to say, "Ye sab Doglapan hai," a phrase that captured the imagination of young, emphatic India. Now, maybe I should just say, "Picture abhi baki hai mere dost."